Thanks very much to everybody for coming and joining today. I'm Adam Gordon. I'm co-founder and CEO at Candidate.ID. I've been in recruitment for 22 years. I'm interested in subjects way beyond recruitment into most aspects of HR and company organization, things like that. But one subject I'm interested in, but I don't know enough about, is culture. Nico's a real expert on that, which is why I've asked him to come and join me today to talk about it. So first of all, Nico, could you just give us a quick introduction? Who are you? Who are you? What's your CV? What's your background? What's your, and what do you do today? And what's Platypus?
Yeah, so I'm Nico. I always start, you know me, we're starting like I'm French, but you could probably hear this within the first 3 minutes of the conversation. The French accent is there. I've been living in Denmark for the past 9 years. I'm based right now in Copenhagen. I've worked in recruitment and HR for about 15 years now. It's insane if you think about it. We're just getting older and older and older. I come from a pure headhunting background. That's how I started recruitment, and I do believe that it's a great school of recruitment. You learn a lot around, creating urgency, sourcing, and everything. I'm usually actually a little bit biased when I build recruitment teams in my previous jobs. I really like to get people that have a background in headhunting because I think they know a lot. So that's where I started headhunting. Then I moved on the dark side of the force, in-house, in a big enterprise, Informatica, Yahoo, and so on. And when I moved to Denmark, because I don't speak Danish, and I still don't speak Danish after 9 years because, I'm French, I'm lazy. Then I basically dived into the startup ecosystem because all the big companies here, they were asking me, do you speak Danish? Do you speak Danish? And startups are less picky on certain things. And therefore, 9 years ago, actually, it's going to be 9 years in December 2012, I joined Trustpilot. And Trustpilot at the time was 30 people in Copenhagen. And within 2 years, we went from 30 to 350 people. I've hired shitloads of people, saw the company grow, build HR, the culture evolved, obviously. We're going to go back to culture. Opened the New York office, the London office, the Berlin office, then went to another startup, Falcon Social. Then I went to Unity Technology. You might know Unity. It's the biggest gaming engine in the world. It's actually a Danish company originally. Hired 500 engineers in 2 years over there, just pre-IPO. It was absolutely insane. Then I went to Revolut. Everyone knows Revolut. They're in the news at the moment. I was chief people officer at Revolut. That was an interesting experience, and we can use that as an example when we talk about culture. Then went to Peakon. Everyone knows Peakon as well, a beautiful engagement tool that just been recently bought by Workday. And I would still be at Peakon if I didn't have the idea for Platypus. Platypus is 2.5 years old. We started the business in February 2019. And Platypus is a culture lifecycle solution. So what we do is providing data about the actual culture of the organization to a company, to the leadership or to HR. And with this data, companies are going to be able to use it for talent retention, talent communication, and recruitment. So our secret sauce, our gold mine, is the way, our methodology to build a cultural map of the organization via the values of the employees of said organization. This is me. And on the side, just like you said, and we talked about it a few times, love rugby, still play rugby. And we watched Scotland, England together at the Euro via Zoom, which was very cool. So keen on sports, married, 4 kids. Yeah, that's me.
Cool, all good stuff. So let's start at the very beginning. I mean, what's your description of company culture?
It's a very good question. I think most people ask themselves the question, what is company culture? And how do you define, if it's a good or bad company culture? And how do you judge it? Do you judge it on retention? Do you touch it on performance, on what's hitting the bottom line? Do you judge it on recruitment and the ability to attract talent? What is culture? One thing is for sure, in my mind, culture is not the corporate values. Corporate values are extremely important. We've talked about this multiple times, you and me. Corporate values are the framework of what do we want the organization to live by. right? But usually it's very much autocratic. Whatever companies are telling you around like, yeah, we asked everyone and everything. No, at the end of the day, somebody had to take the decision. We need to choose those corporate values. So it is very autocratic. Therefore, it cannot be culture because culture is not autocratic. Culture is democratic. So for us at Platypus, and I think when we talked with a lot of HR, company culture is the aggregation of values of everyone that works in an organization, right? So you can have like if basically the bottom line is, if you have enough people in an organization that value work-life balance, that either becomes the culture of your company or your people are living. That is company culture. That is actions taken by people to what is important to them, right? And that is what you're going to experience when you join an organization. So when you join an organization and they tell you our company culture is, you know, corporate values, integrity, respect, and everything, that is not the reality of what you're going to experience. The company culture is not static. It changes all the time because people values are evolving and changing and everything, right? And second thing, it is full of subcultures. Like the fact that a company like, let's say Apple is telling us that they have one company culture is a nonsense, is complete nonsense, right? It's like saying that you have one culture in the US or in Scotland or in France. You have subcultures. When you go to a different city, a different village and everything, you enter a pub, there's already a subculture, a sub-atmosphere and values that you're gonna have versus another one. And it's the same for organizations.
Okay, has culture become, there's a lot of things have changed in the last 18 months, of course. So, you know, there's been a global pandemic, which has made us manage our companies in completely different ways. Do you believe company culture is more important because of that or not?
I think it's as important. I just think that because it should always be important, but I just think that now companies don't really have the luxury of not looking into it. If before a lot of companies, if you even look at their job spec, they're like, yeah, we have a great location, we have a great office. If your culture was your office, what is your culture now?
Yeah.
Right. And like you said, for the past 18 months, most organizations have learned to survive with remote. So how do you define culture when you're remote? So I don't think it's more important. I just think that it's as important, but now it's becoming, we don't have a choice but to look into it anymore. And it's not those beautiful words we put on the wall anymore, right? To me, the pandemic has been good. I don't know if it's the right way of expressing it, but positive for two things. First thing, like we said, remote. There's not one company in the world today that can say we don't do remote. Right? Yeah. I mean, you've done it for 18 months, you've survived, you've learned how to do it. It's not perfect. And like, it's another discussion that we could have, you know, what's the future? Full remote, hybrid, going back to the office and everything. Let's park this one. But that's the first thing. Second thing is, if my culture was being in the office, the words I put on the wall and everything, what's my culture now? And how can I track my culture and show what my culture is? Mm-hmm. And you see all those articles as well about people like, they perceive work differently now. I read like a great article about Google the other day on like this flock of people that are resigning because they're like, if you're asking me to come back to the office, if that's the Google culture, I'd rather look for another job. And I don't want to live in San Fran anymore.
But what you said earlier on about values is not company culture. I mean, policy around where somebody can work, that's also not company culture, is it?
No, it's not.
That's to me, it's not policy. Yeah, that's not.
That's a framework of how do we function as an organization, right? However, you could assume that if an organization is completely open to hybrid or remote or whatever, they would have a better culture around flexibility of work, right? That's an assumption because again, the what they put into place is linked to some values that they have either at leadership or within the organization.
So can a company actually do, or an employer, not necessarily just a company, but can an employer actually do anything to like actively to shape their company culture, or is it completely organic?
So in my experience, and I'm like, I'm not a god, I don't know everything, but in my personal experience with the bias that it implies, in my view, there's three ways to change company culture or drive company culture. Yep. Number one, so if top management that decided this is the type of culture that we want to have, right? Number one, internal communication, trainings, programs, and so on around this is what we want to have. So we're going to shape this. It works, but it just takes forever. Let's be honest, because you know how it is. You tell people we need to change. Everyone is like, yay, we need to change. The moment you start pointing fingers, no, but you need to change personally your behavior and what's important to you. Whoa, 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 I don't need to change. The other people need to change. So it works, but it takes forever. The second way to change and drive company culture, way more drastic, more violent, is to fire people. It's to define like the black sheep that you find within your organization that you feel are driving the culture where you don't want it to go. It works, it's effective, it's very dangerous because you cannot be fully in control of the replication it's going to have in the rest of the organization, right? In my experience, the best way to drive cultural change is by recruitment, by hiring, by like basically filling up your cultural glass with certain values, by finding people, like we're talking about inclusivity and diversity, for instance. You keep on targeting people that are very much keen on inclusivity and diversity. You keep on filling up that glass with this. Your culture is going to start pushing for this, just internally, organically. But you need to bring it from inside to drive it organically.
Right. So, okay. So immediately I'm thinking, if you want your company to be more diverse and inclusive, and you hire people who are, you hire diverse groups of people who have an inclusive kind of approach, that's by default not inclusive because you're not hiring the uninclusive people.
You're not just, so like, again, it's a leadership choice. You decide who you hire and everything, right? That's the first thing. Second thing, just because, and we have the data to actually show this with Platypus, just because you have a diverse workforce doesn't mean that diversity and inclusivity is something that's important in the organization. We have like companies using us, you know, in the UK, in Scandinavia, in the US, and so on. And what we see from the data is that, interestingly, inclusivity and diversity is a value that's usually higher for male than for females within the organization. And now, why is this? Is it because it's taken for granted? Or is it because women actually value other things that are important, maybe career or compensation? But it is super interesting. So we shouldn't take the assumption that just because you hire diverse workforce, you're going to create inclusivity and diversity within your organization. It is not.
I mean, is it males bringing that to the front of their minds because naturally they know that they need to be
potentially, I think in Scandinavia for us the number is super like I think it's because it's been taught and accepted that I should make the effort to build inclusivity and diversity as a white male within an organization.
Yeah, exactly.
It needs to come through me, right? And that's an assumption. But
yeah, I mean, I can. There are so many different factors involved in what the company culture is, and some of them are controllable, as you've just outlined. And a lot of them are not controllable. So one element of the pandemic, which I thought has been very interesting, is Aviva surveyed the insurance company surveyed its people, and they produced the results 4 days ago, which said 47% of their people are less career focused than they were before the pandemic.
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. Like this has been a massive. I even tell my people, you need to be bluntly genuine and honest, even as a CEO, even as an owner of organization. Like when I was an employee, if I die tomorrow as an employee, it's very sad. Your colleagues are going to be very sad. The organization potentially, hopefully, is very sad. They're going to put a job advertisement to replace you tomorrow. That's just the reality of the business. It's very, very blunt but pragmatism. That's what they're going to do, right? So it is just a job. It's literally just a job. And I'm not going into like carpe diem, philosophy but you need to reflect on career is important, but to what cost? Do you live for working or do you work for actually living and so on? And the pandemic has been a massive slap in a lot of people's face around like, you know what? I'm going every day, getting up at 6 a.m., going to this work, doing the rat race and everything. I hate it. I am not enjoying this. And I always tell people it is kind of luxury being able to think like a privilege anyway. But the moment you're not enjoying what you're doing 8 hours per day, just leave. Leave.
I've got something as a slight tangent to tell you about, which is that around 15 years ago, the Falkirk Herald, Falkirk's a town in Scotland, the local newspaper, the Falkirk Herald, had a front page story which was school janitor suffers terrible accident. He'd fallen off a set of ladders and he'd hurt himself. I think he was still alive, but he'd hurt himself really badly. And beneath the article, there was an advert, school janitor required, Falkirk High School.
That's exactly what I just said. And are you surprised? Because the business need to keep, so I understand the logic of the business, but businesses need to realize that people now have more choice. The other thing with remote, the pandemic, is that your new employer maybe is not in Scotland or in Denmark. Maybe the perfect company for you is based in Switzerland and they're okay with remote. And so this is really like leveling the playing field. An organization need to realize that they cannot bullshit people anymore with like, we have a great culture and a great office. Yeah. It's not what turns me on anymore.
Who within an organization, who's actually responsible for company culture? Or is it the CEO? Is it all senior executives? Or is it deliberately nobody?
It depends what you want to do with it. Like responsible for it, everyone. In my point of view, everyone is responsible. Yeah. Everyone is acting on the culture. If we want to use the culture for like strategic decisions, either recruitment, retention, or performance, then either we're going towards, if it's a small organization, it's strategic, like very much the CEO. To me, that's the most important thing you have in your organization because it's the only edge you have versus another company doing the same thing as you. Right? But the bigger you grow, the more obviously you specialize in an organization. Now we have this beautiful title, Chief People Officer. I think it's going to change because like we should look at Chief Culture Officer. We need to separate people from people operation and recruitment because it's two completely different jobs nowadays. Yeah. And you need to have somebody that's only taking care of culture because culture is both along the line of recruitment, retention, and performance. It's everything within the organization. So I see a transversal job as kind of like almost as a project manager, super high level project manager, a chief culture officer that works with every aspect of the business to look at what are my subculture in the organization? Are we happy or not happy with this? What do we change? And how do we use this for recruitment, retention, communication, management, and so on?
So that job is starting to become much more common. I'm seeing people's job titles change from being like head of talent to becoming head of talent and culture, for example. The only thing is that I think culture can go way beyond people as well because culture is a brand.
It's your brand
issue 100%. As well.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's your brand.
So is marketing or branding?
I'll give you I'll give you an example of somebody that just bought Platypus, Doctify in the UK. This very cool startup. And Jess, she's the VP of People and Brand. And to me, that makes complete sense because you are taking care of the people, the culture, but the culture and the people, that's your brand.
Yeah.
Right? So
which company is this, right?
Doctify.
Okay.
And let me put it in the chat.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's absolutely correct. Let's just move slightly on to be a bit more specific on recruitment.
Yeah.
There are we've got a scenario now where it seems to be a global situation where we're getting less applicants for jobs. People are moving less. They're still resigning from their job, but they're not going to another one. So I don't ever remember that scenario before where there's actually lots of people out of work, but nobody's really actually applying for jobs. So what are the different ways to make use of culture when it comes to recruiting? So
first thing first, before even culture, I think I love what you're saying. People are not applying for jobs anymore because I think it's linked to maybe it's a bit of culture, maybe it's a bit of what you're doing with your organization as well, is that this new generation, our generation, the new generation, they understand that whatever job ads you have, usually it's bullshit branding. Right? Yep. Companies like, I don't want more candidates. I don't want loads of candidates. That doesn't make sense for the candidates, for the organization, for the recruiter, right? This whole concept of like looking at a pipeline, like, wow, the bigger the pipeline, the better. Look at all these candidates I'm attracting. You're going to have to say no to all of them. You realize, right? Exactly. It's useless. Yeah. It is useless for you, for me, for them, right? Yeah. So this whole bullshit branding, how do I attract as many people as possible to my organization? To me, is completely counterproductive, and that needs to change. People are not applying because they're not driven to apply. Why would I apply to that job where I can just take the job spec, remove the logo, put the logo of another company? What makes it so special? Nothing. It's exactly the same stuff. So what you're doing at Candidate.ID or what we're doing at Platypus, that's already going to change this. It's about finding the right person and nurture that right person because that candidate might be the perfect candidate today, or maybe it's the perfect candidate in 6 months, 12 months down the line. You don't know. So you need to find the right candidate for that specific organization and nurture that candidate, right? People are not applying. I'm really happy people are not applying, because I think the whole concept of job ads and everything needs to burn generally. I mean, like I'm so tired of and I don't know, LinkedIn algorithm, I don't know about you, but they keep on pushing jobs for me. It's like, I want to write to them saying, I'm happy where I am. It is my company. Stop pushing jobs for me. Like, why is this?
Well, I actually noticed it this morning. I pressed refresh on LinkedIn 5 times, and I had 5 different adverts, which were check out job opportunities at this company, at this company. There wasn't even a specific job. It was just come and look at, and I was looking at the companies all in different industries and things like that. And I was thinking, the algorithm's getting desperate here.
Yeah, you know? Yeah. And perhaps the other positive thing with this whole COVID reset of the mindset of looking at work and looking at recruitment and everything is the fact that maybe nowadays people are going to realize that LinkedIn is great for sales, but it's not good for you as a person. There's nothing good for you as a person, right? It's just great for recruiters, for salespeople to find data, find information, and then hunt you down. But me as a person, I don't see value in LinkedIn. I'm using it just like you as a CEO because it's a great marketing channel, right? And it's great for branding. But me, Nico, personally, what do I get out of LinkedIn? Not much.
Yeah. I mean, I really couldn't agree more with you about the concept of applications. And I really believe that in recruitment, people are absolutely obsessed with the number of applications they can generate. And I've been in a number of different debates recently about making it easy for people to apply. And, you know, a lot of people think that candidate experience is about making the application process as easy as possible. But my problem with that is, if somebody doesn't want, are the people who didn't apply because you put an extra stage in, are they the people that are actually going to come and join your organization? Are they going to turn up for the interview, for the assessment center? Are they going to complete all their sort of,
I'm completely with you.
You know,
I think the problem needs to be just because, like, again, you remember there was this like arm race around like, yeah, you can apply in 2 clicks or you can apply in 1 click and everything. How is that better? Like, that tells me that the person is not keen. They're just doing it at scale. They're just pressing 1 button. They're going to press 50 buttons during the day. They haven't looked at my organization, the specificity of my organization, the culture of my organization, or the subculture. They know nothing. They're just basically shooting in the dark.
Yeah. And what happens there is we end up with applicant tracking systems with 500,000 irrelevant people. And that's a massive waste of, it's just a massive waste of like real estate on your data, on your candidate, you know, talent pool. And it means that recruiters can't use that for actually getting jobs filled.
Completely. So and it's a bad experience for the candidate. Like, if your goal is to go like for like the whole thing is like good candidate experience, how is it a good candidate experience that, okay, I click twice and I can send you my CV and everything. I don't know if it's relevant for my culture, my job, or whatever, my skills. And then anyway, I'm going to be rejected.
And so if something is really easy to access, there's less satisfaction and prestige around actually, you know, getting access to that.
Very true.
So, you know, the concept of scarcity is something that's really important. And I think a lot of employers have made made a big mistake in making it too easy for people to apply.
I agree.
If you apply for a job at McKinsey, you're not going to get a 1-click application. You know,
I agree. Be doing that. It was the same with Unity, and because you're looking for very, very, very specific talent. What we're trying to do at Platypus is kill the concept of bullshit branding, right? What I want is for an organization to tell me exactly what I'm going to experience in terms of subculture when I join that specific team. If I join finance in Glasgow, what is the subculture I'm going to experience versus joining sales in London, versus joining tech in Paris? Because every department has a subculture. Now, by telling me, hey, this is our culture, you're lying to yourself and you're lying to me. Tell me as a candidate, as a person that's going to join your organization, what's going to be my cultural experience? What am I going to add to, right? Because you're not fitting in a culture. That's another big lie. Like these terms needs to disappear. Culture fit, culture match is bullshit. It is, again, it's a cocktail, right? What am I going to add to? What am I going to bring? And what am I going to experience? What are the core values of that sub-team and how do they function within those core values? Tell me this, create the interest. And you know what? Actually make me having a good candidate experience by me realizing it's probably not good for me. It's not a match. I shouldn't apply for this. I'm saving my time and I'm saving your time.
So what are the most common what are the most common things you see when there's a bad company culture? What are the classic bad company culture sort of traits?
So just quickly before, bad company culture, again, it's a term like it could be bad for you and me because we wouldn't feel that it's the right environment for us. But we might know some people that are very much thriving in this bad company culture, right?
Can I just quickly say, I think the Brewdog's a very good example of that, because Brewdog has been getting so much criticism for having such a bad company culture, but to me, it's a high performance organization where, you know, you will be managed in a certain way, you will be spoken to in a certain way, and if you are not happy with that, then fine, you need to leave. And that's an example.
It is a great example. I'm with you. The thing is, like, there's not such a thing as a good company culture. It's not one size fits all. A good company culture doesn't mean like Friday bar and a ping pong table. Some people will tell you, I don't want this. This is not important to me. What I want is career development plan. I want to know where can I be in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months down the line if I perform super well. I don't really care about it's good to be genuine. I don't care about my coworker. I want to kill it. I'm like, and then Brewdog or like Revolut, for instance. That's a great example of this, Revolut as well. It is like a dog skills, kind of, but look at how well they're doing if you consider that your culture is then built to performance, and that's completely fine. Other organizations might see their culture built around retention. Because yes, if we look at Brewdog and Revolut, their retention is probably shit, right? They probably drop 30 to 40% of their workforce on a 12-month basis. But then again, if the company is fine with this because they value more building a culture of performance. So that's why in my mind, there's no bad or good culture. There is, I am not in the right place. But to go to your question, what happens with bad culture? Well, what happens if you keep on hiring people that are not in the right setup? You're going to drop. Your retention is going to be terrible. And we know that recruitment is expensive. So if you put on top of it, I need to keep on re-recruiting the people that have dropped because I didn't hire the right people, you're killing your organization. As simple.
I understand that, actually. If you think about like investment banks and like city law firms and things like that, where they've got a reputation that you're going to work like 70, 80, 90 hours a week.
Yeah.
And I think for most people, they would consider that that's bad culture, but they're not ashamed of that at all.
No.
And they attract the people who want to do that because they perceive themselves as, maybe survivalists or something like that, or they know it's going to be their career.
Nikolai, the CEO of Revolut, that I worked closely when I was there, he used to call it the A players. For him, it was the A players. Somebody who doesn't care about not having a life for the next 5 years, who's going to give me 90 hours per week and everything, and for the organization. Like, I don't like the term A player because basically you're telling that everyone else that's not in your little eugenicistic version, you know what I mean? But you want a certain type of people for your organization, so be it. And if that's the culture that you want to build as a leader, so be it. You and I are responsible for the culture that we have in our organization. I don't want people working 90 hours per week because I see the long-term burning, and then it's going to make myself harder to attract the people that I feel I want to have in my organization, right? The good example around this, around like the culture that you have in an organization and like hiring the wrong people for this is, I'm going to jump into the football analogy, but look at the beautiful French national team. And you and I were having a discussion before the Euro, and we were like, yeah, France is going to win. I mean, they have the best team and everything. And on top of it, they just brought Benzema on top of it, like, which is arguably one of the best strikers in the world. But Benzema wasn't there when we won the World Cup, right? And there's a reason for this. Now you take on skills level and performance and experience, somebody that's one of the best in the world, you bring it into an ecosystem that was working very well, very nicely and everything. Now, I was not part of the French national team. I don't know what happened. I just read L'Equipe and all the French newspaper and everything. But then suddenly you bring somebody whose the mindset is completely different, and that breaks the culture of the ecosystem and therefore the performance of the team. And that to me is super interesting. Because you cannot just focus when you do recruitment, culture in recruitment, if you only focus on the skills and the experience of the person, if you like negate looking at culture value and what it will be the impact of this person, if I bring it to the team, you will burn. Right? Tell me.
It's a really great example, actually. And if you think about individuals within that unit, so Paul Pogba, really important part of that unit for the World Cup winning team, but actually considered to be one of the biggest problems for Manchester United.
Yes. But for the French national team, like a pillar, like you cannot do without. But at United, all my English buddies that are, I'm an Arsenal fan, so French obviously Arsenal. But all my English buddies that are like United fan, they're like, yeah, but I mean, he's not the same at United. He's not good and everything. I'm like, it's not the player that's the problem. It's the environment that you put him in. As a leader, my job is to put my people that I want to perform in the best situation possible, right? Like my job is to give them the tools and everything to perform. And one of those tools is the setup, the culture, the values that they have around them.
Have you got, I mean, as you know, I'm a sports fan like you. Have you got any other examples of like where culture has positively or negatively impacted a sports team? I mean, I'm thinking about the All Blacks as an example.
The culture that they have, the values that they have is basically, in my mind, this constant, we are the best, but we're never going to say we are the best. We can always do better. We will always find ways of getting better and more structured and find ways to fine tune to get ourselves to the top. To me, and there's nothing, what I love with the All Blacks is that they consistently bring some of the best players in the world, Carters and everything, but they don't build everything around their best players. They understand that it's just part of the team. Just because you're the best player doesn't mean you're more important than maybe I love props as well because I play in the front row as well. Just because you're like amazing with your hands, that doesn't make you better than that person. That person has as much of an impact as you have in the team. And it's the same in an organization. Everyone impacts the culture of an organization. Just because you and I are like the CEOs of the company, yes, we have a bigger impact, but we cannot negate the fact that everyone in our company has an impact on our organization.
It's funny, without thinking about it too closely, watching the British Lions play rugby 2 nights ago with my son, who's 7, and he said to me, right, who's the best player for South Africa? I said, there's not really such a thing in a rugby team because they all do completely different things. And he said, what about in the British Lions? I said, well, it's the same in every rugby team. It's very difficult to say because they've all got such different roles to fulfill. And they're all a little bit more similar in football, but they're still not. You still can't, the top striker is not going to be very good in goal, for example. Probably not.
No, but on football, you can have a Ronaldo or a Messi that wins a game for you. On sheer, it happens, right? In rugby, I don't think you can. Genuinely, even if you have the best player in the world, the person cannot win that game. Although you could argue that Wilkinson won the World Cup, but that doesn't.
John Olomu would be the only example. You could put him into a school rugby team, and they'd win the World Cup.
Yes, but then it was just a unit. Yeah. But to me, this concept of, I really like the example of Benzema, who's class. You could bring him as like, he would have a net positive on any team you put him in the world, like just because of his skills and experience and everything. But you bring him into something that was well functioning in terms of culture, value, alignment and everything, and you kind of break that. Rabiot as well. Rabiot has massive issues, and you break this dynamic within the organization. And you question then, should I try to bring the best on paper? Even for me, for my company, does it make sense? Or when I talk and coach lots of startups around building their recruitment function, what type of talents that we want to attract and everything, I keep on telling them, don't fall for the trap of ex-Google, ex-Apple, ex-Facebook. Just because they have this beautiful stamp of they were amazing in this big company, that doesn't mean they're the right people for you. Really, it's not. You need to look more than just like the stamp of, wow, they're amazing on this.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. Okay, so final thing I want to ask you about is, like, for a company that is thinking that they need to try and make the best of their company culture, make more of it, try and actively do things with it. Like, where do you start? What's like the first thing you have to do if you want to go on a journey of making it a real asset for you?
Yeah. I mean, the easy answer would be buy Platypus, right? But it's probably not the answer that you want. I think first step is really realizing that whatever you think you know about your company culture is full of your personal bias, and you are looking at it from your own personal standpoint of like, this is my culture. That might be your reality and perception is reality, but that might be completely different for your colleagues, and they have a different perception of what they live within the culture of your organization. Yeah. So first step is really to collect data, right? Kill assumptions by having data, because without data, you're just another person with an assumption. Collect anonymous data. Give people the room within the organization to have a voice and a safe place to voice what is our company. And you don't even need to buy tools for this. You can do like a SurveyMonkey and everything, or like Google Docs that give people anonymity to, to collect data. You will probably then be surprised about what actually drives your culture within your organization, because again, you see it from your focal point and not the whole point. Now, this is what we do with a lot of companies. A lot of companies are reaching out recently saying like, we want to revamp our culture and everything. And I tell them, you don't revamp your culture. You already have your culture. What you need is to understand your culture, right? You need the data. Once you have the data, then you can decide, am I happy with what I have? And do I want to change it or not? And how do I make this a massive asset for my company? And the best way to make this a massive asset about your company is to be truly genuine and honest about what is it that drives us as an organization in terms of value. If you're honest and genuine with candidates and everything, that will work. You're going to lose less candidates.
Yeah, absolutely. I've just got one other thing that I would add to that, and that is you need to really appreciate that your company culture is totally transparent from the outside. You can't fake it. Employer branding is almost fruitless. There is no point in trying to convey an impression of a culture which is something that you want it to be in order to try and attract people, because everybody can see on LinkedIn, on Glassdoor, from talking to people, the world's much more transparent than ever has been.
And just putting words on the wall doesn't make it true. Just because like you're right, respect or integrity doesn't make it the reality of it.
Yeah.
And like you said, Glassdoor, I take it always with a pinch of salt, because the problem I have with Glassdoor is that you and I could right now put some reviews about Apple, and we've never worked for Apple. So I think Glassdoor needs to be taken with a pinch of salt in terms of the quality of the data, but it usually gives you a good indication of, or at least a good way to start gathering information about a company.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Nico, I always enjoy talking to you about this subject. Thank you very much for joining me today.
I need to come over and see you in Glasgow.
Absolutely. Yes. No, that'd be terrific. Very welcome. Everybody who's been watching this, I hope it's been interesting. How can people, what's the best way to make contact with you, Nico, if they want to follow up?
LinkedIn, very simple. Nico Blier-Silvestri. Platypus.io is the website for the company.
Lovely. Thanks very much. All the best.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye for now.